So tonight, yes, we've been talking a lot lately about addiction and how the Course in Miracles applies to addiction. And it doesn't ever actually use that word. It uses the word fear, and it uses the word ego, and it uses the word, the Course in Miracles talks to us about the purpose of the ego is to separate us and then to claim our life. That is the purpose of the ego. Now, when we talk about the ego from the Course in Miracles, we're talking about that ego that got damaged as a child and learned that the world was not safe, and that love is not safe, and that people are not safe, and jobs aren't safe, and playgrounds aren't safe, and schools aren't safe, and churches aren't safe, and nothing's safe. It causes pain. So that ego became very fragile and delicate, and as any child's ego is. It's already that way. It's already an open source of, just love me and let me love you, and that's the way it's designed. But then when that pain invades that healthy ego of the child, then it becomes damaged. So when we talk about the ego in the Course in Miracles, we are talking about the ego that is trying to protect, or at least that's what it tells us. It's closed. It closes the heart. It closes the mind. And it starts dictating. Do this. So when we're talking, or don't do that. So when we're talking about doing something that's good for you, it'll bring up every fear-based thought imaginable. And so we had a good example tonight. One of our members here is starting a new job on Monday. And of course he's excited about that, but at the same time the ego's working him over. Well, you don't know enough. Or, they're not going to like you, or what did I get myself into, or what did my boss get himself into, and this is becomes an obsessive type of thing and robs the joy of the experience. Like any relationship, no relationship has to work out. The only purpose of any relationship is to share and receive love. And so as long as people are sharing and receiving love, and that's our primary focus, it doesn't matter how it turns out, because if it turns out short term, if it turns out medium term, if it turns out for life, it's all part of the share and receive love process, so it doesn't matter. But the ego doesn't want us to have any of that joy and wants to rob us of all the joy that it can before we ever even do what it is that it's telling us to do. And then turns around and takes all the joy out of that experience. The other way that it works concerning addiction is that, and it took me a long time to realize of it, that the ego says, go ahead and eat that candy bar, you deserve it, or go ahead and have that drink, it's been so long, and after all, you haven't drank this long, of course you can drink, or go ahead and smoke that pot, or you haven't smoked in 20 years, you can just have one, go ahead and do it. And go ahead and cheat a little, or get on the porn site, or do the cheat on this a little bit and lie a little bit about that. It'll talk you into doing things, and it'll make perfectly good sense. Keep going back for more abuse. It'll be different this time. I'm not going to be different, but it will be different this time. So that's how it compels us in addiction to very, very cunningly talks us into doing something in the name of it. You deserve it. It will be good for you. And then what happens the minute that you do it? Why did you do that, you idiot? What's the matter with you? Aren't you ever going to get it? What did you expect to weigh after you ate that? How did you expect to feel after you started drinking? How many times do you have to do this? How many DUIs do you have to get before you get the message you can't do this anymore? You're going to get caught in that affair. Sooner or later, you're going to get caught. I tried to warn you not to get caught, and it's just never ending and never ending and never ending, and it's a vicious cycle. And the whole purpose of that ego is to pound you down and separate you more and more, because the more that you choose out of the place of the ego, which is all fear-based, because it's saying this: if you don't have that ice cream, if you don't have that sex, if you don't have that relationship, if you don't have that job, if you don't have that money, if you don't have that whatever fix it is du jour, because as soon as you get fixed on one thing, it wants the next one and the next one and the next one. The whole purpose of that is to isolate you, to cause you to not love yourself. Those are all substitutes for authentic love. Every addiction is a substitute for authentic love. So it wants you to get further and further and further in pain and isolation and separation. I'm worthless. I'm no good. They don't love me. I don't love me. Nobody loves me. And you're not lovable either. You're all evil and bad because you all have caused me pain. Now, of course, none of you have caused me any pain whatsoever, but I project that onto you because they caused me pain back then, and you remind me of them. So it's just this whole vicious cycle that keeps going round and round and round. So we want to catch on to this, because once we start to realize that when that voice, which is very, we have the two voices, we have the voice of the ego and we have the voice of the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit is nothing but love. In fact, the Holy Spirit loves you so much, it'll say, go ahead, it's your life, I'm not going to interfere. I'm not going to interfere in your decisions. You try everything you want out there, and if you survive, you may come back to me. You may come back to deciding to love yourself instead. That's where the Holy Spirit does not interfere. Love does not chase after you. It is, in each one of us, there is an abundance of love, but we have to seek it. It will not intrude itself upon us, nor will the voice of the Holy Spirit ever intrude upon us. It might whisper in your ear, are you sure you want to do that? How are you going to feel the next day? How are you going to feel after you get this quick fix? What's really going to happen? And that's where we have to get wise up to the ego, because it is a dominant voice, and it is the most logical and rational and convincing voice. And the ego will create scenarios so that you need that fix, or you think you do. It will convince you that you're so wound up that you need that fix. Of course, it led you to that state through your thinking and through the actions and all of that. It leads you to this place that you're so tight that you need to unwind. And rather than unwinding in meditation and a nice hot bubble bath and taking a walk on the beach or talking to a friend or having dinner with someone and getting it out in a healthy way, or journaling, or planting flowers, or cooking your favorite meal with healthy food, and all these, and having a nice cup of tea, going for coffee with someone you love, all of these ways are to unwind yourself and fill yourself up with love. But the ego won't do that. The ego wants it right now, quick fix, right this minute. So, and then it beats you up for doing that. So as your world gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and darker and less light, and that's where people either drink themselves to death, eat themselves to death, totally become so empty and void that they kill themselves. And we see a lot of that. We hear, it happens all the time, but we particularly hear about that on the news with celebrities. Why in the world did that person kill themselves? Why did they do that? Because their ego had taken, I don't care what their condition is. People have all kinds of conditions all the time. There's so much help available. But the ego will get us so wrapped up in that loneliness and that separation and that emptiness that we don't want to be here anymore, because there's no reason to be here anymore, according to the ego. There's no love here. There's no love anywhere. This is just, I don't even know what this means. I don't know why I'm here. It doesn't make any sense at all. I don't want to be here anymore, so I'm checking out. And that's when people literally kill themselves. If they were coming from the place of love, they could see, well, wait, the worst case scenario is I could go out and help someone. That would make me feel better. I could go give, even if I don't have any money, I could go buy a homeless person a cup of coffee and try to help them to feel better. Worst case scenario. No matter how bad you feel, you can call someone you haven't talked to in a long time. Just, I just want to call and tell you I love you. You're sharing love, and every time you do that, you are stepping out of the ego. But the ego is gets us so wrapped up. Our heart closes tight, and the mind shuts into that, locked into that ego, and then that's it. It's over, and that's really, really sad. So we want to, as students and teachers, if you're a student, you are also a teacher. We want to really learn to recognize our own ego, and it's constantly judging. Now, sometimes it can get tricky because you're saying, well, I want to be loved, I want to be loving, and this situation doesn't feel good, and, since I'm not a victim of the world I see, I just need to keep being loving and be truth and be this and that, and, I don't need to say anything, and I don't need to do this, and I don't need to do that because, that's all fear-based, And so the ego will use all these experiences that are stressful in your life to cause you to hold it all in, keep it all in, don't let it out, don't do anything with it, and just be more spiritual, rise above. So I call it spiritual bypass. And that will never work. That will never work, because we are human beings and we have emotions and we have life experiences. But the Course will convert all of those things into helping us see that a lot of what's going on for us is about the past. Something happens now that reminds you of something painful in the past, and you're reacting to that person now from that pain of the past. So what you want to do when that happens is deal with the pain of the past. We need to embrace it, we need to face it, we need to grieve it. And so then we can come at the situation that's reoccurring now from the place of love. From the place of love. This is how I feel, this is what was going on for me, and this is why I'm reacting the way I am. Now, a lot of times people say, I can't have that conversation with anybody, they won't get it. Well, they don't need to get it, you need to get it. You're doing this for your own self-love. And so you want to be able to address conflicts from the place of love. Some people think if they're spiritual, they're not, you don't need to address conflicts. The conflict is always in you and nobody else. And I don't agree with that at all. My understanding of what the Course teaches us about love is that we are bringing ourselves into authenticity and truth. And so if we're hiding out in our anger and our guilt or whatever's going on and we're not sharing that openly with someone, then that is not love. That's choosing fear. I'm afraid to say this because that person might blank, or this situation might blow up. So we don't take care of ourselves. We just stuff it and stuff it and stuff it. And then we keep ourselves in that same traumatized state of when we were children, when we tried to speak up and we got shut down. And so we're still letting that whole process continue to take place like it always did. A lot of times children are, why is mommy or daddy doing that? They're not doing that. Why would you talk about your parent like that? Or the child's sad, I'll give you something to cry about if you cry. What's the matter with you? Or the child throws a toy, I hate you, and they get hit, rather than I understand you hate me. That's normal to hate me. It's okay to hate me, but it's not okay to call me a name and to throw the toy. Just tell me I'm really angry, mommy. So children aren't taught how to get their feelings out in a healthy way and to be supported and loved in that. So we have to do that for ourselves now. We have to learn how, through love, to express ourselves. Because if we don't, that's what the ego uses to store that pot, like the witch's brew. Oh, good, resentment number 1, yeah, resentment number 2, yeah, or that person did this to me, and my wife did this to me, and my husband did this to me, and, brewing it around, and then perfect, right? I deserve to do X, Y, Z. I deserve to engage in my addiction, rather than to have, healthy, loving, honest communication about the situation. So that's really what I want to cover tonight, about addictions and the ego. That the ego is all about addiction. That's all it's about. And it's all fear-based, that if I don't do it, I'm not going to be happy. But, we have lots of people in this room who haven't done it, whatever the addiction was, for a long, long time, and they're perfectly happy, So we have to be careful that we don't just give up an addiction. We have to give up addiction for love. Because if we don't learn how to love ourselves, you give up this addiction, and then your ego will pick up the next one. And you give up that one, and I went through almost all of them. I went through almost all of them before I realized, what are you doing? This is crazy. You're not getting better. So, all this spirituality and all, but it was intellectual. It wasn't experiential, like being true to myself and true to those people that I love and telling them how I really feel. Whether they're strangers, business people, my family, my spouse, whoever, to really authentically be loved by loving myself and honoring that person, that we are in a relationship, no matter what form that relationship takes, and to be authentic and share, but not to attack. Now, we all are going to attack. We're all going to forget and we're going to attack. But if you can remember, when you're angry, wait. wait. And then when you feel that you are going to be able to talk from the place of sharing and receiving honest communication, including learning things about yourself that you might not have known, and not being resentful and not being defensive. Just, this is how that person's experiencing me, and it's probably based on their past. Probably doesn't have so much to do with me as it does about their past, but I want to hear what their triggers are, because I don't want to keep pushing those buttons, and I don't want my buttons pushed either. So I'm going to allow and encourage that type of genuine, loving communication. That's real intimacy, but always with love and not attack. So rather than do an addiction, do self-love. And that means what we were talking about earlier: stepping back, nurturing yourself, healing yourself, allowing yourself to feel your feelings, allow yourself to get connected to nature, allow yourself to meditate or pray or talk to someone who will listen to you. I had my husband. I had a very stressful 3 weeks trying to do a real estate closing. It was a nightmare. It was a real ego nightmare. But I had two people that I was really able to just keep getting it out with, and they were able to really give me that support. If I had not done that, I would not have been able to stay. And at points I did get totally overwhelmed, but I would have not been able to have done nearly what I was able to do, and not, blow up the place or anything like that, or even think about blowing up the place. But I was able to take certain actions that I had to take in order to demonstrate that I expected people to keep their word as they promised, and in a couple of instances had to take some steps to make that happen. So to just say, oh, divine order and all, which I do all the time, and I'm a big believer in divine order. When someone isn't treating us with love, then sometimes we have to take the steps to ensure that will happen. So we have to do that for ourselves. We can't expect the whole universe to just treat us with love all the time, no matter how loving we are. We have to sometimes hold people accountable to step up to that place of moving from an abusive way of handling something, or an unconscious way of handling something, or an unkind way, or an absent-minded way, or whatever you want to call it, into the place of love, which is we keep our word with each other. So with that, I'm going to close for tonight, and thank you all.